Section 1. The Cold Open Hook. Basque. In the Green Mountains between what we now call northern Spain and southwestern France, there's a people who speak a language unlike any other in Europe and carry a genetic signature that doesn't quite fit the surrounding map. For centuries, they've been described as ancient, isolated, and different. But where do the Basques actually come from? Are they the last surviving descendants of Europe's original hunter-gatherers? Or are they a population shaped by waves of migration that simply preserved something rare and ancient along the way? Scientists have been wrestling with this question for decades. And now, ancient DNA is finally giving us answers. Some of them are genuinely surprising. In this video, we're going to trace the genetic story of the Basques, from Ice Age survivors who once roamed a frozen Europe, through the arrival of farming communities and Bronze Age migrations, to the modern DNA patterns that still puzzle researchers today. And what we find is not a simple origin story. It's something much more layered. Section 2. The Geography Anchor. To understand the Basques, we need to start with where they live. Today, the Basque population is spread across roughly 3 million people, mostly concentrated in the region of the Basque Country, hugging the western edge of the Pyrenees Mountains. And here's what's important. This isn't just a scenic backdrop. Geography is the entire story. These mountains and coastal valleys created natural corridors and natural barriers at the same time. People could arrive, but they didn't always leave. That isolation, repeated over thousands of years, is one of the reasons the Basque genetic profile looks so distinct compared to surrounding populations. Today, Basque culture extends far beyond its homeland. There are strong diaspora communities in the Americas, especially in the United States and Latin America, where Basque sailors and shepherds once migrated in large numbers. Their language and identity traveled farther than their geography ever suggested it would. And physically, Basque populations show traits that have drawn scientific attention. One of the most discussed is their relatively high frequency of certain genetic markers associated with lactose tolerance compared to other ancient European groups. That detail might seem small, but it connects to a much bigger story about adaptation and survival that we'll return to later. Because the real question is not just where they live today, it's how long they've been there, and who was there before them. Section 3. The Language Clue. Before genetics, linguists had already noticed something strange. The Basque language, known as Euskara, doesn't belong to any known language family in Europe. It's a language isolate, which means it has no confirmed relatives anywhere else on the continent. No Latin connection, no Germanic link, no Slavic root. And that alone has sparked endless theories. Some researchers once suggested distant connections to ancient languages of the Caucasus region. Others tried linking it to pre-Indo-European languages that disappeared without a trace. But none of these connections have held up under modern linguistic scrutiny. Here's what makes it even more intriguing. Some Basque place names and older linguistic structures seem to preserve patterns that predate Indo-European expansion entirely, which hints at deep continuity in the region. And this is where it gets interesting. Language often mirrors migration. When people move, their language usually changes or disappears. But Euskara survived. But before we get to the DNA, we need to go back much further, to the people who were here first. Section 4. The Ancient Layer, Prehistory. After the last ice age, roughly 12 Eozoran years ago, much of Europe was still cold, open, and sparsely populated. In what is now northern Iberia, small groups of hunter-gatherers moved through forests and coastal zones, surviving on game, fish, and wild plants. Ancient DNA studies suggest these early Europeans carried traits we might not expect today. Some had darker skin combined with lighter eye colors, a combination that challenges the way we imagine prehistoric Europe. They were not a single uniform group either. They were diverse, adapted to micro-regions, and deeply connected to the landscapes they lived in. One important archaeological window into this world comes from sites like the Cave of Santimamigne in the Basque region, where human occupation stretches back tens of thousands of years. These caves preserve traces of symbolic behavior, hunting patterns, and long-term settlement continuity. Then, around 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, a new wave arrived. Neolithic farmers moved in from Anatolia, bringing agriculture, domesticated animals, and a radically different way of life. These farmers slowly mixed with the local hunter-gatherers, but not always evenly. In some regions, the mixing was deep. In others, it remained limited. The Basque region appears to have been one of those places where continuity mattered. The genetic signal shows strong survival of earlier European ancestry alongside farming ancestry, creating what scientists call a genetic mosaic. Then came the Bronze Age. Around 400 or 500 years ago, steppe pastoralists associated with the Yamnaya cultural horizon expanded across Europe. They brought new technologies, Indo-European languages, and genetic signatures linked to haplogroups like R1b. And here's the surprising part. While much of Western Europe shows a strong steppe genetic influence, Basque populations show a more moderated version of that shift. They absorbed steppe ancestry, but not to the same extent as many neighboring groups. That makes them a kind of preserved genetic layer, not untouched, but less overwritten. The ancient Iberian Peninsula becomes a palimpsest, each wave riding over the last, but never fully erasing what came before. Section 5. The historical drama layer. For a long time, historians believed the Basques were simply isolated survivors, untouched by the sweeping changes of European history. But DNA studies began to complicate that story. A major turning point came with research published by teams including the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, which analyzed ancient genomes from Iberia. The findings showed something unexpected. The Basque genetic profile is not a frozen relic of prehistory. It is the result of repeated mixing events followed by long-term regional stability. The history books often suggested that Roman expansion would have fully absorbed local populations in Iberia. But when scientists examined genetic data from Roman and post-Roman layers, they found continuity. The Basque region did not experience a complete genetic replacement. Instead, it shows remarkable persistence of earlier ancestry through Roman administration